a lot of people out there complain. And there's actually a lot of reasons why people complain. And before we take it into account that it is negative, because nobody likes to hear a complainer, you need to get into the depths of why people complain. Because sometimes, you know, we have the urge perhaps to vent. So venting is kind of like the urge to explode. So it's a way that it makes people letting it all out, okay? And that can give them relief of the inner tension that one can feel from their current situation, right? And it also helps these people to be ready to face the next frustration, believe it or not, in their life, right? Sometimes people need to blow off in a means of communicating. So it's not always a bad thing when people have the need to vent it out. We need balance, you know? We can't always be positive. You know, expressions need to be put out there. Sometimes people complain. You know, we might be feeling frustrated, or maybe somebody, you know, did something to us and we feel like they did the wrong thing, they wronged us in some way. And having the need to say it provides us with a emotional validation from the other person. You know, it's like an ointment cream for you know, our bruised egos, you know. And maybe, you know, hearing somebody say, I know how you feel, you know, I'd be frustrated too, you know, it can feel like a warm hug to the other person that is giving the complaint, right? And after that person receives that validation, right, it's just like a little child who got a little kiss from their mom, right? They get back to their confidence and are ready to go back out there and face the problems, you know? So, you know, complaining to other people about what is bothering you, it gives people the opportunity to open up to other people's input and perhaps to find some solutions that the person might not have thought about, right? And a lot of people out there are complaining because they're trying to ask for help. You know what I mean? Maybe they're looking out for solutions. That's why sometimes people complain, you know, because people might need, you know, another perspective. So they're trying to reach out by complaining, you know, because, you know, sometimes it helps to tell a friend that you trust about something that you're facing, and perhaps they can see something that you're not seeing, or there might be a different way to look at the same situation, right? So complainers is not a bad thing to be asking for help from the other person, because a new perspective might be needed, you know? And the benefits of getting that new perspective, because if you sometimes look at something in a different way, it can help that person that is complaining dissolve their anger and frustration, and it can even open them up to new solutions and even to more possibilities for being able to cope. Because people complain when they're trying to cope with things, right? And sometimes there are people out there that complain, and these types of people can be the ones that know that they need to make a change, but they simply are not ready perhaps to take a risk and perhaps even put the effort quite yet, right? So they might be looking for motivation. Yeah? What's another thing? Say, for example, you complain to someone who is in a position to make changes, And if you use a diplomatic approach, complaining in this way can be actually more effective in relieving stress than actually saying nothing, since the polite complaint approach will still get results. But let's not forget that complaining can also be damaging, right? So when people are venting out and it becomes a continual habit, or perhaps even a few people venting their frustrations, it can turn into a group of constant complainers, where we get into more stress-inducing territory, So people need to also be careful not to overdo it, because there is such a thing as too much complaining, right? Because while complaining, it can be a means to build motivation, but it does keep the focus on the problem rather than on the potential solution. So if you're a person that spends too much time complaining, you can actually work yourself into a place of, resigned acceptance, or perhaps that feeling of being stuck, rather than of the motivation to actually change, right? We know by now that there are a lot of benefits to having an optimistic outlook in life, and it's far better than having a pessimistic frame of mind, So attitudes can actually work like habits. We can get used to thinking in a certain way, and we can start automatically taking on those perspectives. And a habitual focus on the negativity can bring a habitual pessimistic perspective, right? So when you're focusing on things about which people chronically complain, you are also at the risk of becoming more and more angry, okay? And this anger can take on a life of its own, and you can start feeling more angry about more and more things. So you need to be careful from that, because this anger can also lead to relationship and health problems, and it's really not good for you, right? Complaining is quite contagious, right? Because you're emitting your negativity, and people as energetic beings absorb, whether consciously, whether unconsciously, right? If you find that you or your friends are constantly complaining about the same things and you don't feel better afterwards, it may be time to look at new topics, of focus, right? And say, for example, you don't have the support of other people, right? Those who frequently complain are often known as energy vampires by other people, right? You need to be careful that you're not complaining to a point that it becomes so heavy for the other person that they feel so overwhelmed just by listening to you, right? Because the problems that we complain about, they often need solutions, right? And you need to find the way to take the stress out of these challenges and to minimize them, and to be able to manage and find a solution to the problem. So, of course, complaining has good benefits as a way to relieve your stress, but that comes in small doses, If it's excessive complaining about problems, whether they're big or small, right, that just isn't an effective solution. So you need to find ways to reduce complaining, right? And that can help you be more likely to be able to see the world with much more optimism, and even to have more gratitude.